Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us either live or later for a special Portland Book Week edition of Vintage Books Live. Very pleased to have Emmeline Duncan, Sonja Thomas, and Angela Sanders here with us tonight. We are going to, I'm just popping over to the YouTube page for just a second so that I can make sure that I can chat with anybody over there. I just gonna get that set up so we can do a chat if anybody's there. I'm not seeing the chat, so we'll come back and fiddle with that in just a second. But I'm going to start us off by having everybody sort of, I introduced them very quickly, but you can introduce yourselves a little bit more slowly and give everybody a chance to kind of share about what they write, what their latest book is, and then we're just going to jump in and talk about bookstores and why we love them and all that good stuff. So let's start with Emmeline. If you could just talk a little bit about what you write and what your like latest book is, or what your newest book that's coming out.
Well, as Christy said, I'm Emmeline Duncan. I am the author of the Ground Rules mystery series and also a new Halloween bookshop mystery series. So my Ground Rules series, which I've been on Vintage Books Live talking about before, started out in 2021 with Fresh Brewed Murder. Then there was Double Shot Death and Flat White Fatality, and then Death Unfiltered just came out at the end of last March. And so it's a series that's all based around a coffee cart and roastery in Portland. So it has a definite lot of like Portland hipster vibe to it. And then I also have Chaos at the Lazy Bones bookshop that comes out at the end of July. And it's a Halloween book set in the outskirts of Portland, a very fictionalized version of St. Helens. And it has a lot of Halloween love and bookshop elements.
Yay. Can you show the cover of I see it behind you, or if you've got one there.
Well, I have, yeah.
Yay. It looks super cool. I mean, all of Emmeline, yeah, I was gonna say all of Emmeline's books have been cool, and the cover artist for the Ground Rules mystery series is also really very good. But the Lazy Bones, I just personally find it a fun art style. So,
and one thing that's fun is they put different artwork on the back cover. This is the advanced copy, and different artwork inside. So they really did a lot of really awesome illustrations for this.
Yeah, it's very fun. I'm very much looking forward to it. So I'm going to jump down one, at least on my screen, and to Sonja. And if you could introduce yourself and share your books.
Hi, everybody. My name's Sonja Thomas, and I write for children of all ages and all genres, but yes, there it is. Thank you, Emmeline. My sweet spot is middle grade, pretty much contemporary coming of age fiction, and my debut novel, Sir Fig Newton and the Science of Persistence, that came out, oh gosh, March of 22, and then the one that Emmeline was holding up, All of Blackwood Takes Action. That one just came out a month ago, and that one's about an anxious, aspiring filmmaker in Portland, Oregon, who bands together with an unlikely friend group to save their beloved state animal, the beaver.
You know, one thing that Sonja didn't tell you is that she also has a pretty cool background in is as like I don't want to say CFO, but you have like a finance background, which is I thought really cool.
I did not know that.
Oh,
see,
you
we're
did?
getting all little secrets. We're bearing secrets from our
that was like an old life that I'm desperately trying to get rid of. Yeah, and
well,
the cool
there's
thing was
some
too.
useful skills. I'm thinking.
Oh yes, definitely. The creative and the analytical definitely come in handy, especially like on the editing side. I'm still a huge lover of Excel spreadsheets. So.
And finally, Angela. Yay.
Hi, and I'm Angela M. Sanders. I have a really squirrely cat in my lap right now. I don't know what's happened to her. It's like she's just become obsessed. She'll normally jump into my lap and lie down for a minute, but she just won't settle down. And anyway, I
That's
don't
okay. I told Angela that we like cat visitors.
know. It's distracting because I'm waving my arms around because she keeps trying to grab my palm. But anyway, Angela M. Sanders. So I write the Witch Way Librarian Mysteries featuring a witch and librarian in a fake town that's kind of like Vernonia and kind of like Gaston, that is on the other side of Gaston. The last book that was released was Gone with the Witch, and the next one coming out at the end of November is The Witch is Back, and I'm currently working on Witch and Tell. And
Yeah.
then in Witch and Tell, I'm going to introduce a character who is going to spin off into her own series coming out in hardback. And I don't have any
Ooh.
more to share with you. And
Okay.
it's going to take place in
We'll get the
Astoria.
we'll get the so when
Yeah,
Angela's book comes out in November, we'll hopefully by then we'll be able to get all
yeah,
the
I'll have more
juicy
details.
details
I'll
about
know
that.
more.
Awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what's on my mind right now. Besides this squirrely cat.
Yay. That's so awesome. And I think honestly, one of the things as a writer and bookseller that I love about this area is there's just so many writers that, I keep books keep coming out and I keep saying to myself, I don't know, I feel like at least once a month, if not more often. Oh, I didn't know that person was in, this area and, add another person to my list. And so it's fun that we've got such a rich group of writers writing all kinds of things. And the other thing we have is, and honestly, I had no idea really. Like I knew we had a lot of bookstores, and before we went on the air, Emmeline and I were talking about the fact that I personally have been really excited to see sort of the bookstore population rebound in Clark County in the last
In
few
the last
years,
few years.
because it had really compressed down to just a few. And I don't know if you guys have been in, you guys are kind of in slightly different areas from me geographically, if you're seeing the same in your area. But until this Portland Book Week came out, I really didn't have a concept of just how many we have and within a relatively reasonable driving distance. Um, I'm going to hold up the bingo card. So for those of you who are watching and watching before the end of the weekend, which is the 15th and 16th, you still have time to do all of this stuff. If you catch us later than that, then it will be over and you'll have to wait for next year. But I am guessing based on the excitement and success that they're having that this will become an annual thing. So, but this is this year's bingo card, which I won't hold it up too long because it's so tiny you can't really read it. But on the back is the list of like 50 plus bookstores. And I had no idea really that there were that many. And then I know of some that aren't even on here, of people that for whatever reason didn't hear about it in time or couldn't do it this year. So we just have so many cool stores. The furthest one north is Literary Leftovers in Battleground, and the furthest one south, I'm not sure White Rabbit Books and Gifts in Oregon City. So, but when you think about it, for me personally, I'm kind of right in the middle of that. So it's like half an hour north to Battleground, and it's probably 40 minutes south to go to the one in Oregon City. So like each of them are, and then everybody else is kind of in that circle. So it's quite a lot that really is fairly accessible. So I would really encourage anybody who still has the opportunity to stop by one of your local stores and pick up a bingo card. And even if you don't finish bingo, it's kind of fun to like see all the places and see all the categories and pick a few to go to and whatnot. But
And it'll give people a list to go to in the future.
yes, exactly. Yeah. And also, I don't know how many of the other stores have this, but we also this is a Cascade Booksellers Association thing, which is I think I don't know if it's a subset of the ABA or not, but they also put out like a little brochure. This year, I think it's like green, and I know we have a stack of them in the stores, but they list all the stores that are a part of Cascade Booksellers Association. And so, for anybody who wants more detail than just this list on the back of the sheet, we have those in the store at Vintage, and I would imagine the other stores do too. So anyway, just a plug for the bingo game and the activities this week. There's also, if you look at portlandbookweek.com, there's all the events that the different stores are listed. I know that Emmeline's doing one later in the week. I don't know. Why don't you just talk about that really quick, and then we'll jump into questions. Emmeline, you're doing an event later this week at one of the Vancouver bookstores?
Oh yeah, I'll be at White Oak Books tomorrow at 6 p.m. and I'm interviewing another author. And so it's actually for the launch of her book. And so it's really fun. I get to be the one that
That's
just
awesome.
asks questions and and I get to moderate and put her on the hot seat. So
Yay, awesome. And Sonja and Angie, are you doing anything for Portland Book Week this week? Okay.
Being right here and
Yay!
reading frantically as
That's awesome.
always.
No, I'm glad you guys did this, especially because I was like, oh, we should do something fun. What could we do? And I was like, let's just invite everybody. So, I mean, no matter that it's all the last minute for everyone. But let's start out like in our bookstore chat. And I will admit that I put myself on the spot first so that I would have something to talk about. And I realized that I didn't actually have an answer to this question, and I had to call my mom. So if you don't, it's okay. But I was like, well, I was wondering, like, do you guys have a favorite childhood bookstore memory? And if you don't, like, like you can pull into like young adulthood too. Like, I don't want to like make it. I was like, I don't know if I do. I called my mom and said, what bookstores did we used to go to? And we had this long conversation.
I know for me it'd be more library.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
Like I was a
for me
heavy
too.
library user. And I
Yeah.
mean, I
Yeah.
remember going into like my mom would take some like paperbacks and you could like it was a small used bookstore. You'd like return like buy books, like kind of put them back for credit and get new ones. And I
Yeah.
remember going to like driving into like Portland, like which is a couple hours from home, and going to like a Walden Books. But really it's all about, I would say, the
Yes.
library
Yeah,
into
me
adulthood.
too. Yeah.
I
I
have to
was
say
oh,
too.
go ahead.
I
Yeah.
was going to say the same for me. It was like every Sunday was going to the library. But I do remember whenever we went to the mall, we actually just called, I thought it was J.C. Penney because my mom would always park and that's the same entrance. So I literally thought that's where I was like, yes, we're going to J.C. Penney. And right when you go into the
The
mall
whole
part,
mall is just JCPenney's.
that always stuck out. And it's like I'd be so excited because we go to the bookstore, which I couldn't think of the name because I was trying to think of. I'm like, I know we always went there, and it was like my favorite spot, kind of in tied with the ice cream shop. So but I always knew. But I think it was Walden Books because at first I was going to say B. Dalton, but I think it was Walden
That's the
Books.
other one that I couldn't remember. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
B. Dalton was the world. I grew up in a rural area and there wasn't any bookstore within probably about 40 miles. But when I was 12, my mother got involved with Hell's Angel. So a little bit of a story here. Why I'm writing.
Yay.
And it was a difficult time. So she sent me down to her parents' house. My grandma and grandpa lived in Southern California in this old folks trailer park where you could stand on the front porch and see the fireworks at Disneyland, which was kind of exciting. But my grandma once in a while would take me to this used bookstore that was in her neighborhood, and I loved it. But I had a problem. So my grandma, rest her soul, she is, now no longer with us. But I read so fast that she was super cheap. So she would, I had like a bookstore budget of like 75 cents a week or something like that. So I remember buying these books, and the poor woman at the bookstore took pity on me. So she gave me for free a biography of the Jackson brothers, with Michael Jackson on Jackson 5. And so I would read a Nancy Drew in 4 hours, and then they're slowly reading this biography of the Jackson brothers. but the kindness of that woman and that bookstore stick in my mind. And the Weekly Reader. Did any of you have the Weekly Reader?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was
That was Scholastic. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
I actually
Um,
did just think of one fun bookstore story. The town that I lived in Lincoln City, there was, I think it was called the Book Nook. It's no longer there. But when I was about 10 or 11, I did go to a book signing with M.K. Wren, who wrote, I think she has 5 or 6 books in her Conan Flag series that were set in a fictionalized version of Lincoln City. I have a copy of the first book in that series, Curiosity Didn't Kill a Cat, that she signed for me. And I told her I was going to be a writer too.
aw, I love that. But
Awesome.
I have a similar memory of, I was sitting there as I was writing out question and thinking, I don't remember. I mean, I'm sure we did. I know that like the budget was a lot tighter for my parents than, I'm lucky enough to have not quite as tight of a budget as they did when I was growing up. But because of that, we didn't really go out shopping a whole lot. Um, so I have mostly library memories of going into the library and coming out with a stack that I had to put my chin on to keep, from falling over. But then all of a sudden, right at the end of the conversation, my mom's like, the mall, there was a bookstore at the mall. So when you said that, I was like, yeah. And I do remember that. Like my parents would be like, we're gonna go shopping, stay here at the bookstore. And I just sit in the corner and look at books. So, but yeah, I think libraries probably for me personally were a bigger memory when I was younger than than they are now. Now, pretty much wherever we go, we try to find bookstores and yarn stores. The other thing I was thinking about was, um, the whole issue of Amazon, and there's so many layers to it. But if we peel off all the politics and the socioeconomics and all of that, um, like we can literally have pretty much any book we want in, sometimes less than 24 hours, if you order it from Amazon. And I'm curious what role you think, what makes a local bookstore important beyond the socioeconomics. Like we could easily talk about, local bookstores mean local jobs and they keep the money in the community and all of that kind of stuff. But in a world where we can pretty much have anything we want anytime we want really quickly, like what role do you think, why are local bookstores still important? And I just am curious what your feelings on that are.
If I can jump in here, I think that there is a problem with having anything we want anytime we want, and that is we don't really know what we want. I think. And yeah, the algorithms can feed us book covers and say, based on all the information that
Yeah.
we gleaned from your cookies that you don't even know, or this is what you think. Like,
Yeah.
but a bookstore for me is about discoverability. A lot of times I go to a bookstore thinking, oh, I know I want the latest book by, Ruth Wars or whoever. And then the rest is just wandering and looking at titles and pulling them out and reading a few pages and then talking to the bookseller and seeing what people are liking or what he or she has liked. And it's that just, it's discovering things I didn't even know that I wanted. And then I also like how they smell. Bookstore smells so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, there's no such thing as smell-o-vision yet.
I would say one of the biggest reasons is like it's purely just like curation. Being able to go like you'll end up finding your favorite stores based off of who carries the types of books you tend to like, right?
Yeah.
So if you like love mysteries and you find a bookstore that has a great mystery section, that's where you're going to go back and you're going to find, books that you didn't know about because of like the word of mouth and the information they have that and the catalog, even the catalogs they use and the kind of the paths they find books compared to if you just go online and search where there's so many potentially good, potentially not useful for
Yeah.
you recommendations.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree with that too.
Kind of jumping on what Angela said, I used to work at Powell's Books, and one of my close friends was the manager. And she had told me the story that it just touched me because she was saying that there was this kid that was just, you know, I can't remember what book they loved, but they were just looking for something different. And when she was talking to the kid, you know, she was like, Percy Jackson, this is what you need, this is what you want. And she overheard the kid when they were at the checkout line. She's like, Mom, she really gets me. And it's just, you know, you're not gonna get that from Amazon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it is,
Or
it's that.
honestly, any online experience, right? Like because you know, like Amazon's always the elephant in the room, and
Mm,
I mean, we could go off
that's
on
true.
that for a long time, in the problems there, but really, I wasn't even necessarily thinking of so much just why is Amazon bad, but so more of why in-person stuff matters. And I think the curation was one that did not pop into my head immediately, but is a big thing for me personally. I know we've been going to Cannon Beach bookstore for years and years and years, and I love that place. And every time I walk in, there's always something where I was like, how do I not, you know, like even as a bookseller who's now going through catalogs and seeing a lot of stuff that maybe I wouldn't have seen before and downloading way too many digital arcs that I'll never get to. But even still, I still see things in that store and many others too, but that one comes to mind because every time I go in there, I think, who's curating this? This is great. But yeah, I think it's overwhelming. Sometimes you're right, having so many choices. Um,
And then plus
is
people that are
too
working
much.
at the
Yeah.
bookstores love books, you know, it's I would say 90% of them, it's not just a job, it's a passion. So
I
that
think what's
helps.
fun for me as a worker, was people coming in and looking, you know, just being able to talk about books all day is really fun for me. And
I love of independent bookstores. I especially love bookstores that have used books as well, like vintage books. I mean, like there's that wall in the back of vintage books with all those just weird old books, a lot of them with gorgeous covers. And I
yeah.
picked up a couple of 1930s, like contemporary women's fiction of contemporary of 1930s, and they were fascinating. Somebody must have just sold you a whole list. I can't remember the author's name right now. I'm sure it's on the shelves behind me,
Yeah.
but there must have been like 20 books by the same author. And they were, you know, kind of semi-florid romances featuring, you know,
Oh, is it Grace Livingstone Hill?
yes, Grace Livingston,
Yes.
yes. But
Yeah.
they were so fun to read because it was just such a picture of the time and what people
Yeah.
wanted to read. And it's just, I never would have found that unless I was wandering through a bookstore and a bookstore with used books. Another thing, I was in the Palace at Cedar Hills just last week looking for books on Astoria because of my new series. And I stumbled across, I mean, as I discovered later, a book by Washington Irving. Washington Irving wrote a best-selling book about Astoria called Astoria in 1936 or 1836.
Oh wow.
It
Oh,
was it was
really?
a big hot book in its time. He was friends with John Jacob Astor. And Astor said, you got to write about Astoria. Nobody knows what really happened there. But that book has sort of fallen. Nobody seems to know
Yeah.
about it anymore.
Yeah.
And I
Interesting.
wouldn't have found it unless I was just browsing, pulling things off the shelf and looking at them.
Yeah. Yeah. Were you gonna say something, Emily?
Oh, I was gonna say I was talking about like the curation and the sense of community. I don't know if anyone went to the now it's now closed Canyon Way bookstore in Newport. They opened in the 1970s. They also had a restaurant. They on site. They just closed in the pandemic. They retired. Same owners. Their daughter
Yeah.
baked for years. But whenever you shop there, like if you picked up a mystery, they always had the reason basically why the book was in stock was like under the front cover. So it could be a publisher's wiki review they had cut out, or like a shelf talker, right? Because like shelf talkers to me are one of the best things in
Yeah.
bookstores, like because someone showed the passion of like why that book is there, why you should read it, and it was every single book had a reason.
Oh, interesting. That's so
That's,
fun.
yeah, that's
That's
it.
also a lot of, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that's a ton of time. Because
Mhm.
I try to do shelf talkers in the store and I'll go through little spurts of like having a bunch of them out there and then we'll kind of rotate through stock and then they'll all go away and I'm like, oh, I gotta do more.
I think that's like the publishers by lot why there's also just the publishers weekly, like they
Yeah,
might,
yeah, I have
copy the
done that
review
too,
and
where
stick
I've
it.
got them out and but that, yeah, the love and care it takes to talk about why every single book, because quite frankly, there is a reason why every single book is there. Like sometimes it'll be that the publisher's rep says, well, we think this is going to be a really good, we think people are really going to like this one, So sometimes we will buy books based on the recommendation of the reps. But most of the time it's because one of us went, oh, this looks really good. And even if we don't get to read all of them because there's no possible way we could, like somebody in the group said, oh, that looks really good. Let's get that one, And so I love that they said why. That's really cool. Do you have a favorite because you guys are in slightly different areas of the greater metro area. Do you guys have a favorite bookstore that isn't vintage that you think, I mean, obviously, I would love for everybody who's watching to come and see us because we love you all and we want you to come and see us. But there's so many good ones. So I would just love to hear about some of the others too, like honestly, selfishly for myself too, so that I can go check them out, but just for other people watching, if you've got favorites that you really like.
I definitely have a favorite, but I'm going to look up its name right now because otherwise I'm going to get the wrong name. I'll let somebody else talk. Well,
I've been a fan of Annie Bloom's books in
Yeah.
Southwest Portland for a long time. When I lived in Southwest, it was kind of like my neighborhood shop, and I would go in, and it's just a wonderful store with a really, like a nice curated selection, knowledgeable staff, all the fun things. I also like if you want to do a road trip, Bob's Beach Books in Lincoln City,
Yay.
because they have so much, and they're new and used, and you
Yes.
find gems, and there's also like new releases, and it's just so much fun with that what you can find is pretty amazing. And also
Yes.
beach books and seaside,
Yes.
really
Yes.
well curated, fantastic
Yeah.
mystery section, also like a very thoughtful bookstore.
Yeah. Fun fact, Bob's Beach Books. Bob is Becky's brother.
oh,
So
no
it
kidding.
runs in the family. And there's
Wow.
also oh, it's Robert. Bob's Beach Books is in Lincoln City, or not Lincoln. Is that right?
Yeah,
Lincoln
yeah,
City.
Bob's
Yeah.
Beach Books in Lincoln City, and then Robert's Bookshop is also in Lincoln City,
Yes.
but
A
Bob's
little
is
bit
like,
further south.
yeah,
Yeah.
but Bob's is the commercial, like more like where
Yes.
Roberts is more of the rare books. Because I actually grew
Roberts
up
is
behind them.
labyrinthian.
Yes.
I've only been to both of them once. We usually like are on the north coast or the south coast and not always in the middle, and so I've only been there. But Roberts is like the storefront looks, reasonably sized, and then you go in there and it's like long this way in the front. So you go in and you kind of wander around the front, and then you turn right and you go some more and you go some more, go some more, and it just goes on forever. So that one's the good place to go if you just like want to get lost in it, literally lost in a bookstore for hours. But Bob's Beach Books is really, really well curated. And basically, one of his daughters runs that. And
Mhm.
I think they curate like the things that they think are going to be most appealing to the most people or that are quirky or fun for like the tourists and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And those come to Bob's Beach Books. And then Roberts is kind of all the things that you can possibly imagine.
Yeah, and I was in Bob's one day when someone brought in books, and Diane, his daughter, was actually evaluating which she might want to sell or what books might actually fit in her father's bookstore as
Yes,
well.
yeah,
I
yeah.
literally
And
grew up behind Robert's bookshop. Like I
oh,
would wait for the
really?
school
Oh,
bus
that's
like on their front
awesome.
door. So yeah.
That is so awesome. Yeah, I mean that it's so funny because Robert and Becky like will pass stuff back and forth too. So we save stuff for him and he saves stuff for us, and the conversation is always, we're going to get way more books than we send out. Like we need to like have an equal trade so we don't have so much stuff to go through. And yeah, it's fun. Do
I
you
found
have?
my bookstore,
Oh,
and
yay! Okay.
it's backstory books.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's new and used books. Pretty small. It's in an old house, and they sell yarn.
I
And
have
it's
not
from
been
here.
in there,
And
but
they sell
yeah.
new and used yarn. So you can
I
bring your
love it.
yarn stash that you
Yeah.
haven't used and sell it there, which is kind of nice. They have a great cookbook section and a good mystery section too. And it's one of those, it's a bookstore where you can easily spend a couple of hours, feel like you've seen everything that you want to see, and you're sure to come out with a bunch of stuff. It's a
Yeah.
great little bookstore.
And that's so fun. I had not heard of that one until this Portland Book Week, because the gal that is one of the people that runs that was heavily involved in planning, and they did such a good job.
Yeah.
And she was the one that dropped some of our stuff off early on. And so I was like, wait, books
Oh,
and yarn? Oh my gosh. Did you
mm.
have one, Sonja?
That's such a hard
I know.
question. I feel like
You
it's
can talk about more than one if you want to. That's
I don't
okay.
know, it's like I feel like, who's your favorite child?
I
Kind
know.
of question. But I feel like I should point out like kids focused one. I really love green bean books.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just so cute. Like I've never seen I'm just so used to like where I grew up in Florida, there pretty much wasn't any local
Yeah.
bookstores. So I'm just used to the mall kind of thing. So
Where
just
is
seeing like the
Green Bean?
house.
Where is Green Bean Books? I've heard
It's
the name.
Alberta district.
Yeah. Yeah. We
It's
are gonna do the crawl tomorrow with the bingo.
mm,
And actually in Alberta, on Alberta Street, there's Green Bean, which is the furthest west, closest to
mm,
I-5. And then there's Parallel Worlds, which is a sci-fi fantasy store,
oh,
and Monogram Bookworks, which looks like, I haven't been in there, but it looks like it's like their focus is fine art, and that kind of thing. And then
And the cookbook bookstore too, right on
Vivian,
Alberta.
which isn't on the
that's
book crawl, but I'm probably going to go in there anyway because it's a cookbook store. And then what's the other one? Melville, I think, is the other one on that street. So like you can just I don't know if we can walk to all of them. I think they might be a little bit too far apart for that, but like you just go down the street and you hit 5
Mhm.
bookstores. So
But I think if you put on a comfortable pair of shoes, you could do it as a walking tour.
oh
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to see though, because we've got a lot of we have big plans. We'll see how far we get.
Mhm.
I may get to that point and be like, I don't want to walk anymore.
You could always Uber back to your car.
There we go. There you go. So have you have a like a more recent memory of maybe a bookstore on vacation that you can think of? Um,
I can tell you a bookstore I love that I discovered when I was away. For about 8 years, I did annual cat sitting in Paris for 3 weeks, which is kind of it's a
um,
really awesome way to spend time in another country. But there's a bookstore on Rue Monsieur le Prince called um, San Francisco Lights. And it's a used bookstore, mostly used. There might be like 5% new books. And there's the mystery section back in the corner is full of like the green and white old penguin mysteries, and
oh,
just
fun.
stacks of, you could just go through, like my thing is to go through and try to find golden age mystery books written by women, and just go through the stacks and pull them out, and they're usually like €5 tops each. And the other thing that a book I saw there, which I'm so sorry I never bought, was I don't think it was a Michelin guide. It was an old travel book of an area of France that was written right after World War One. And so it would say stuff like, go through Madame whatever's yard and down by the ditch, and you'll see where this battle happened. It was this great
That's very cool.
the sort of bookstore. It's small, where you just discover a lot of great stuff. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of my number one recommendations if you go to Paris. Besides cat sitting, just to stay there for
Well,
free.
yeah, I would like that gig. That sounds good.
That was good. Well, it lasted. It was really good.
Anybody else?
I have an answer, but I was gonna let Sonia go if she wants.
can't remember the name, but I have a good memory of a bookstore when I was on travel. It was actually in Paris, and I just remember it was gorgeous, and just like the whole stack of books too thing that you were talking about, just like going through everything. But what I loved about it, I remember I ran into there was someone studying abroad from the States there, and she was also like writing poetry. And I just, in that moment, that's when I knew I don't want to do accounting anymore. I want to be a writer. She is living my life, living abroad
Yeah.
and working on, well, I didn't want to do poetry, but I knew that I wanted to focus on writing. And I still have the book that I bought that just kind of, solidified that moment. It was have it somewhere on a shelf where it's about a girl just like going through really tough emotions. And that's always kind of been the focus too of most of my books, is just how do we move through our emotions. So I love just going to any bookstore,
Yeah.
anywhere I go. That's
Yes.
one of the first
Yeah.
thing I ask for: coffee houses and bookstores.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same when I travel. I'm always looking for new bookstores. I would say two that have really stuck out to me. One is a Mysterious Galaxy in San Diego is an amazing shop. Their focus is on basically genre fiction. They have good mysteries, they have a lot of fantasy, a lot of sci-fi, a nice romance section. And they have so many shelf talkers. Like I swear half their books have just the shelf talkers you read and you're like, I want to buy, right? Like half the store. They do such a
Yeah.
great job with it. And then also actually in Bandon, there's this really fun little bookstore called, it's Wind River.
Winter
And one
River.
thing, yeah,
Yeah.
Winter
Yeah.
River, thank you. And one thing that I thought was interesting is they had whole sections that were like, I don't think they didn't call them remaindered, but a lot of
Yes.
them were
Yeah.
cheap. They were like, yeah, they're like
Yeah.
$5, and they were books that otherwise would be sent to be remaindered. And so I don't know how exactly they get them, but it's kind of cool because there were a
Yeah.
ton of like
Yeah.
new books for $5.
Yeah. No, I think they actually they call them Winter River Remainders. I think I don't know exactly how that works on the like the business end of it, but I know that we do have to sell books, send books back occasionally that we don't sell. And I think there must be an avenue where you can then get those books to try to sell them. I don't know how that all works. But yeah, they're great. I really love them. I think I was trying to think of anything that I could think of, and I think the one that stands out to me is I was very lucky and got to go to Japan in 2023 with my daughter who was studying abroad. So I went out with her at the beginning and we spent a week together, and then she did her study abroad, and we tried to hit up bookstores, and one of them was set up kind of like I remember like B. Dalton or Barn, like in the mall, and it was just like in the shopping center area, and you could tell there were like cooking section and children's book section and all the stuff just like we would have. But one of the shopping areas had I think it was probably more literature and philosophy, and they just literally had stacks of books everywhere. I mean, there were shelves, but then there were just stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks. And I think what I loved about the whole experience was like book lovers are book lovers. And even if you're standing in a bookstore where you can't read any of it, and I was sitting there using Google Translate to like try to figure out what it was, what are these poetry books or what are these things? There's still people that are just engrossed in, books and love books, and that seems to be fairly universal, even if you can't, like, even if you're not speaking the same language, which I thought was really cool. So, well, thank you all so much. This was fun. I hope you get a chance to go to a bookstore this week if you can. And Emmeline, I hope your event tomorrow goes really well. I think it's going to be really awesome. And thanks for hanging around and talking books with me.
For having
Thanks for
us.
having us.
Yeah, it was fun. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.